So I just got back after 10 weeks being in Italy, and there was one common thread that kept coming up every time I spoke to anybody and told them that I was from the United States. Now, I posted this on Twitter, and people just simply did not believe me. They didn't think, well, a lot of people did believe me, but I was surprised that this tweet actually went viral. But a lot of people were like, no, this didn't actually happen. But I posted this. After 10 weeks of being in Europe, I learned everyone, Italians, Germans, Danes, French, they're all afraid to even visit the United States. They all really think they're going to be deported the minute they land. Now, this post ended up this went viral. I did not expect this one to. I'm surprised it did, but then at the same time, maybe I'm not so surprised. Got over 100,000 likes, 17,000 people commented. A lot of the people commenting were saying, not true. This is just clickbait made up. I don't know how you could say this is made up. I'm not stating any sort of facts here, except the experience I had after my 10 weeks of being in Italy, talking to a variety of people from all around Europe, and the people expressed the same thing over and over and over again. Now, the things you hear when you're an American and you're in Europe and people find out is they say, oh, America, the American dream. A lot of people will say, I want to visit America. I've always dreamt about going to visit America. I'd love to see New York, right? They say these types of things. But then the next thing people say is, oh, but I wouldn't want to go to the United States right now. I'm afraid to visit. I heard this over and over again. I heard people telling me, oh, the World Cup, they're thinking about actually moving the venue out of the United States because so many of the soccer players are afraid to enter the United States. They're afraid they're going to be detained. And every time I heard this, my immediate reaction was, oh, you have nothing to worry about. I mean, you're a European. And I heard this from very wealthy Europeans, travelers. These were white Europeans. These were blonde-haired, blue-eyed people from Finland and Denmark and Sweden and Germany. It was the Italians. I mean, it was just a slew of people, none of them brown. I'm just going to say none of them were brown because a lot of people think, oh, it's just the brown people are being targeted. So if you're white, you're fine. Or it's just those who intend on staying, and they're coming in from countries where we've got a border crossing problem or whatever. And that's just, look, these Europeans were the classic, the group that you would think would not feel threatened at all, white, wealthy, coming from Scandinavia. And yet they were expressing every single time I spoke to them hesitation about visiting the United States. My immediate reaction was always, that's crazy. Of course you could visit the United States. They're just going after the illegals or just around it, or people they think are illegal, workers who they think are undocumented or whatever. And I really kind of downplayed their concerns only until after I put this post up and I ended up getting all these comments and likes on this. When somebody would comment and say, oh, this is not true, this is just made up, and of course there's nothing to worry about, there would be subsequent comments where people would actually share news stories of Europeans who have been at the border detained and sent back. But look, it's better to just be sent back, but to be detained, that is a whole nother issue. And the thing is that the Europeans, the news that they're getting is not the news we're getting, right? Because we're getting a lot of news about the various different ICE raids, people being rounded up where they're being rounded up. That's not the news the Europeans are getting. What they're getting is when a European traveler is having a problem at the border, that then makes the news all around Europe, as you could understand why that would be. And so they're hearing story after story. It turns out, it's true, story after story after story of Europeans actually being detained at the border, sometimes for even weeks on end. Let me just share with you some of these stories. This is Jessica Brioche. She was detained. She's from Germany. She's a German. She was detained January 25th at the San Ysidro border crossing, which is Tijuana to San Diego. She was attempting to enter the U.S. with a valid ESTA. Now, most of these travelers, if not all of these travelers that I'm going to show you, all had ESTAs. What is that? An ESTA is the document that the United States government requires you to get when you want to travel into the United States. So they're already pre-checked. It's not like you could just book a flight into the United States and you can enter into the country, and then once you get here, they start asking you questions. They actually are theoretically looking into you before you even get on that plane. So you apply for an ESTA, and they then grant you the ESTA, and you think, okay, good, I'm cleared. They did the background check. I'm okay to go. So I'm going to go to the United States. And these travelers had these ESTAs. So she had an ESTA. Nonetheless, she was detained, not sent back to Germany. That would be better, right? Just send you back to where you came from. She was held for 46 days at the Otay Mesa Detention Center, including a reported 9 days in solitary confinement. Border officials suspected her of intending to work illegally due to tattoo equipment in her possession. And so she had with her tattoo equipment. Maybe she was going to do her friends' tattoos. Maybe she's a tattoo artist and she was just going to do some free tattoo art for her friends. But because she was carrying the tattoo equipment, the government thought she was intending to work while here, and they detained her because of working as a tattoo artist. So even if she was planning on working here, like think about that just for 10 seconds. Even if she was planning on working here, does that justify being detained for 46 days and 9 of which in solitary confinement before you get shipped back to Germany? Just put her on a plane back to Germany. Why do you have to detain her for over a month? These are the stories that Europeans are hearing, and it's making them afraid to come visit the United States. Now, how afraid are they of visiting the United States? Tourism in the U.S., it turns out, after researching this, I put that post up on Twitter, and I just thought, I was just making an observation. I didn't expect it to go viral or anything. Once it did, I realized, and some people are pointing out, there's actually valid reasons for this, Kim. We're afraid for good reason. We're seeing European travelers actually being detained at the border. And so then I thought, okay, well, is tourism actually down? Are we seeing some sort of an effect of this on our economy? And it turns out we are. The United States is the only country in the world right now that is not in conflict or war. The United States is the only country in the world that is seeing a decrease in tourism. In fact, this year alone, they're factoring the United States will lose $30 billion in tourism because of the fear the tourists have. They're not coming to the United States. And we're the only country in the world that's not in conflict or in war that is experiencing this decline in tourism. Everybody else is going all over the place. I mean, I just went somewhere and I came back. And all these people are going everywhere, but they're not coming to the United States. So here's another one. This is Lucas Seiloff, also a German. A lot of these are Germans that are being detained. Detained February 18th at the San Ysidro border crossing while re-entering from Mexico with his American fiancée. He was 22 days into a 90-day tourist permit. So he had 90 days in the United States. He was 22 days in. They decided to go to Mexico, which a lot of Americans go to Mexico thinking, let's go on a little vacation. They went on a little vacation to Mexico. When they came back through, he incorrectly answered a question. They asked him, now he's got a language barrier. They asked him, where are you staying? And he answered that he lives in Las Vegas rather than he was just staying in Las Vegas. I think he said he lives in Las Vegas. And they were like, gotcha. And they actually detained him for 16 days in a California ICE detention center because they claimed he was unlawfully living in the United States, even though he'd only been 22 days into his 90-day visa. And for a language barrier, instead of saying, I'm staying in, which, in foreign languages, myself understanding this, having learned Vietnamese as a kid and now Italian, things don't translate exactly. And it's easy to make a mistake like this, extremely easy to make a mistake like this. So he says, I'm living in Las Vegas, and they detained him saying, oh, we caught you. You're living in the United States. You're not supposed to be living in the United States. Here is Fabian Schmidt. This is a permanent U.S. resident who was detained March 7th at Boston's Logan Airport after returning from Luxembourg. He was subjected to aggressive interrogation and held in Rhode Island. His mother reported he was stripped and placed in a cold shower. Despite renewing his legal permanent resident status in 2024 and having no active legal issues, he was detained for reasons that are still unclear. Nobody knows why this German national was detained, and even though he is a permanent legal resident. This has prompted Germany to now, work with the United States and say, hey, we're investigating. Why are you doing this to people? Here's another one from Germany. A lot of them from Germany, like you'd think. So what is the problem with the Germans? What problem do we have with the Germans? Here's Celine Flad. She's a 22-year-old university student. She was detained while attempting to enter the U.S. for vacation in New York and Miami with a valid passport and the ESTA. So she had clearance to come in. She was held for 24 hours, during which her smartphone was searched. She was repeatedly questioned about her travel purposes. Despite providing hotel bookings and flight tickets, she was deported back to Germany without clear explanation. And, even though hers was a little better in that she didn't get detained for days on end and have to take cold showers and subjected to solitary confinement, the issue for her is, look, who wants to spend all of that money? You book a trip to the United States. This is not cheap. You pay for your hotels, you book everything, only for you to get to the border and for some border agent who, maybe he's having a bad day. Maybe his boss got on his case for not meeting quota. You haven't detained enough people. You haven't been deporting enough people. And now he's feeling like, I gotta find somebody to deport. And just randomly pulls this 22-year-old who has authorization to be here and says, that's it. You're going back. Sorry about all the vacation money, you 22-year-old. You've just, all your money gone. People don't want to even risk that. Even if it is just as simple as being rejected at the border and you get sent back on a plane, people don't want to risk thousands of dollars of a lost vacation. They'd rather go somewhere else. Thank you very much. And that's what they're doing. So we're seeing this huge revenue loss in tourism. And now, look, the point of this, you could still very much agree with Trump's border policies and what's happening here. You might just say, hey, this is just a consequence of it. But you should at least know the negatives before you make a decision on whether or not you think that these policies are good. You should know what the negatives are and what the ramifications are of these policies. And right now, the ramifications are people are afraid to come visit the United States. It's not just that they're afraid, like, oh, yeah, we're scaring all the people that are coming here illegally and wanting to live here and they shouldn't be. We're not scaring only those people. We're scaring also legitimate tourists who are just wanting to come and visit the United States. And that, of course, has a ripple effect in the economy in the U.S. You got a lot of these touristy towns that rely on tourism. You've got a lot of businesses that rely on tourism, and all of them now are suffering. So there's a ripple effect that goes into it. It's not just the actual tourism industry of flights and hotels, which is where that $30 billion loss comes in, but it's also the subsequent economic fallout from that, which we don't even know what that is exactly, but I'm sure it'll be a lot more than $30 billion in the end. Here's a British national, Rebecca Burke, 28-year-old Welsh backpacker. She was detained at the U.S.-Canada border in Washington state. She was held for 19 days in an ICE detention facility after Canadian officials denied her entry for lacking a work visa for planned household chores via Workway, which is, I guess, a work, I don't know what it is exactly. U.S. officials classified her as an illegal alien for violating her ESTA by allegedly working. And she returned to the UK after diplomatic and media pressure and faces a 10-year U.S. entry ban, so she cannot come back in. So maybe with hers, she did violate some of the rules. She, for the Canadians and then the U.S., got upset and whatever. But these stories are still making it back. And so people are afraid because even if, the issue is, especially when it comes to foreign countries, sometimes you don't know you violated the rule. The rule was unclear to you and you didn't realize you couldn't do that thing because there's a lot of fine print. And especially if you're not speaking the language, which is what global tourism is, right? People are coming here and they're not native English speakers. So if you don't fully natively speak the language, it's very difficult to know what the laws are. There's a law in Italy, for example. I didn't know the law. Not that I got in trouble for it, but just, as an example of strange laws that we don't have here in the United States that they have there, that how would you ever be aware of it? But every time you go and you buy anything from a coffee to clothes in Italy, they give you a receipt, right? Everyone in the United States gives you a receipt too. What do we Americans often do? We Americans often leave the receipt, right? We don't want the receipt. We're not wanting to carry it. So we often leave it on the counter. In Italy, that is illegal. You have to carry the receipt with you like a certain number of yards before you can throw it away. Why? I'm not really sure why it's a law, but you have to take the receipt and you have to carry it with you. And if a cop stops you, you could find yourself in some serious big trouble. So, these are rules that here in the United States you would never think of. Like, oh, I didn't, I have to carry the receipt with me at like 100 yards or something. So things are not always that clear. And for somebody coming in from, if they might think, oh, I'm just not allowed to work this particular type of job or whatever it is, it's really unclear. The rules are unclear for people and it causes some confusion. Not an excuse. You should know the laws of the country that you're visiting for sure, but she's one case, maybe the tattoo artist, if they're going to accuse her of working. But does that justify being held in detention for weeks on end? Why not just stick her on a plane and send her back? Mads Mikkelsen. This is a person from Norway. A 21-year-old Norwegian tourist was detained at Newark Liberty International Airport after arriving from Oslo, traveling on a valid ESTA. He was held for 5 hours after border officials questioned his travel intentions, citing inconsistencies in his itinerary. His phone was searched. He was interrogated about potential work plans despite presenting return tickets and hotel bookings. So he was like, I'm not staying. I have a return ticket. I'm leaving, and I'm just staying at these hotels. I'm not here to work. He was released after Norwegian consular intervention, but warned of potential future entry restrictions. So he might not be willing to come back. He's probably not going to come back. He won't care to come back. But these are the types of stories that the Europeans are hearing. And these are not the only ones. I'm hearing a lot of other stories where Europeans are coming to the border. They're flying in. Their cell phones are being detained, looked at. There was that one guy that had a meme of J.D. Vance, and then he was sent back where he came from. I mean, you're spending thousands of dollars only to get sent back to where you came from. Why not spend that thousands of dollars in a different country for tourism? The Europeans are just hearing these stories, story after story after story of people just showing up. And especially if you want to show up to the country, but you're not sure where you're going to be staying. Like, for example, for me, maybe I could have gotten in trouble in Italy when they realized I didn't have a place to stay for my entire trip. I didn't book out every place I was going to stay while I was there. So they might have looked at my itinerary and said, wait a minute, you only have a reserved place to stay for so many weeks, but what about this other period of time? The period of time, for example, when I decided to rent a car in Milan and drive myself down to Rome and stop off in various cities each day, and I didn't know where I was going to stop each day. Each day I decided the night before where I was going to go the next day. I guess they could look at that and say, well, we don't know what your intentions are, and maybe you're going to intend to stay in the country and you shouldn't. So, forcing people to have to plan out their every single detail and itinerary. I mean, you're coming to the United States, and you might want to be flexible on, do you want to visit San Francisco? Do you want to visit Las Vegas? Do you want to visit New York? Do you want to go to Florida? Where do you want to go? It's a huge country, and they're basically telling people, if you don't have it completely mapped out, then we're not. Then we think you might be here on nefarious reasons. This sounds a lot like Russia and China and Vietnam. I have friends who have visited me from Russia. I have family members who have visited from Vietnam. They have to give very detailed itinerary to their governments of what they're going to be doing while they're here. And now the United States kind of sounds like that, right? I mean, that to me is what communist countries behave like. They want to know your every single detailed move. And now we're asking that of people. We're saying, you're not coming in unless you give us every single detail. There was another post I saw from Homeland Security. It was actually the official Homeland Security account on X. And they'd actually posted that they had deported a woman. She was legally married to a United States citizen. And they decided that her marriage was a sham. They asked her when her anniversary was. She couldn't remember her anniversary. How many people right now can remember their anniversary? She didn't remember her anniversary. And so they said, your marriage is a scam. We think that you did this just to be able to be here in the country. And so we're sending you back. Now, look, you might say, yeah, Kim, but maybe her marriage is a scam. Okay, maybe it is. It's not up to Homeland Security or the government to make that decision. We have a law in this country that allows you to get married and gain citizenship. If you don't like that law, then change the law. Don't start scrutinizing whether or not you think whether or not the government thinks your marriage is valid or not. Do you really want the government meddling in your relationship to figure out whether or not it's good enough for them? I mean, that is not the kind of country I want to live in. That is not a free country for a free people. Oh, the government gets to decide whether or not, because the other thing Homeland Security said was, well, she only knew the guy for like 90 days and then she married him. So what? People get married in Vegas after a couple of nights of knowing each other. How is it the government's business to decide whether or not our marriages are legit? It should not be the government's business. But this Republican administration, and I emphasize Republican administration because they're supposed to be about freedom and liberty and all of that, right? No, they're the ones scrutinizing relationships. They're scrutinizing whether or not you intend to work in this country because you've shown up, you've been on your visa for 22 days. You accidentally say, well, I live in Vegas when you meant your girlfriend lives in Vegas. You're visiting your girlfriend who lives in Vegas. So you say, we live in Vegas. And, they then say, well, we think we can read your mind and we know your intentions. This is very Minority Report. This is not the America I think many of us voted for or wanted. I think certainly we wanted to crack down on illegal immigration. And certainly we wanted to get border security. And I 1,000 agree with that. 1,000% agree with that. I am not okay being in a country of slave labor. And that is essentially what we've had with all of these immigrants, these undocumented immigrants in the country working under the table. We don't know who they are. They don't have any documentation. These businesses are taking advantage. The business owners should also go to jail. And they're employing all these people. They're paying them dirt. It's basically slavery. It's a new system of slavery. We've implemented it. And you got a lot of people on the left, liberals of all people, sitting there championing it, basically saying, leave them alone. How dare you deport them? No, you're crazy. We cannot have a country of slave labor. We just cannot have a country of slave labor. So we have to do something to fix that. And that means, fine, round them all up, ship them all out. Let's figure out how many we actually need, and let's have a legal system. Let's force Congress to actually do their job for once, because this is actually their job. Let's force Congress to actually do their job and actually make new laws that bring in the people we need when we need them and in the right amounts. So we have to obviously fix that. But I think the biggest issue is empowering these ICE agents to basically act like a gang of kidnappers on the streets of the United States. They're just going around randomly kidnapping people. People are then being shipped off to El Salvador or Guantanamo Bay or wherever it is without due process. That is the biggest issue. And then, or people are being held at the border. They come in just for a vacation and they're being held at the border, and the Europeans are hearing about this. So these are the issues. Like, look, it's one thing that we want to fix the border crisis, and we should want to do that. We should want to end illegal immigration in this country to the levels that it's been in. And, these are things we need to crack down on. But the way we're going about it maybe needs to be tweaked a bit. If it's actually scaring off legitimate travelers, if we're now going to see a $30 billion decline in the hospitality industry, and that's just the hospitality industry, you then go into the ramifications, those other small mom and pop businesses that rely on the tourists, they're in a touristy area, the knick-knack shops. We're going to see a decline in the economy from this. And for what reason? What is the good reason for Germans to not want to come visit the United States? Why is it that ICE border agents are being allowed to kick somebody out who's on a valid visa while they're under the valid visa in this country? So that's the type of stuff that, we need to talk more about. This needs to be more in the news, which is why I'm talking about it now, so that we could be aware of some of these side effects and then say, hey, we don't want this and we need to make an adjustment on this. We do want you to do XYZ thing. We don't want you to do this other thing. So stick to this, leave this part alone. Let's not harm the economy. And we are going to see some harm in the economy, of course, with these people being rounded up and sent away, the workers, or a lot of them are self-deporting. We are going to see food prices go way up. We're going to see some serious economic fallout from it. There's no way around it. But I don't see a way around that because I don't agree with slave labor. That is not an argument for, well, we have to keep all of these illegal workers because otherwise our food prices are going to go up. That is not, food prices going up is not a justification for slavery. Or indentured servitude, or however you want to classify it. So we will feel pain. And I understand that we will feel pain, but then I believe we will correct the issue in an appropriate way. But leaving, undocumented people in this country to work and children in the fields, that is not the solution. But what's also not the solution is rounding up European travelers who are just entering at the border on valid visas after spending thousands of dollars, and now it's scared an entire country of people. And some are saying to me, oh, well, those Europeans you're talking to are just stupid. Okay, or maybe you're stupid. I mean, really, if you're not going to take seriously the concerns of people who are definitely not stupid people, and yes, there is a lot of propaganda in Europe. Yes, the people do believe their news quite a lot. And so the fear-mongering is easy. I'm sure the vast, vast, vast majority of Europeans who enter this country have no problem whatsoever. But they are hearing these stories of the few, and they don't want to take the risk because to them it's not worth the risk. They're planning a vacation. They don't have to come here. So if it's a vacation, Is it worth the risk? A lot of people don't travel to Mexico because they don't like the risk. A lot of people don't travel to China because they don't take the risk. So now we're one of those countries. We just have to face that fact. We're one of those countries. A lot of people don't want to come here because they don't want to face the risk. So I'm curious what you think. I mean, do you think that it's worth it? That, hey, yeah, we're going to see a decline, but oh well. We have to do what we have to do. And it is what it is. I mean, maybe you feel that way, and that's totally legitimate. But you should just know what the negatives are, so that when you do feel that way, it's from an informed position. And I guess that's my take on that. But I'm just relaying what I experienced when I was in Europe for 10 weeks. Is that I heard this over and over and over again from Europeans from all over Europe, and they were all white Europeans, and they were all wealthy or reasonably. They were on vacation in Italy. So they were, they must have some kind of money to be able to do that. They weren't backpackers. Or I was speaking to wealthy Italians, and they are afraid to come to the United States. So, and apparently with World Cup, it is a genuine, legitimate concern. And it's rumor at this point whether or not the World Cup is actually thinking about moving the venue. But some people are saying it's actually more than a rumor. It's actually an active discussion because so many of the players really are afraid to come to the United States. And we'll see what happens with that. We'll see what happens with it. But again, ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it? That's the only thing you need to really decide. Email me, what do you think? Is it worth it? Kim@KimIverson.com, or you could tweet me at Kim Iverson Show. Hey guys, thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you could check out Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.